The little black boy ran to the bikers shouting, "They stole my mom." What the bikers did left everyone in shock. Tears streamed down the face of 8-year-old Tyler as he ran desperately across the gas station parking lot. His worn sneakers slipped on the wet asphalt as he headed toward the group of bikers who had just stopped to fill up. "Please help," the boy cried, his voice breaking with despair. "They took my mom. The cops took her." Jake Morrison, leader of the Road Devils Motorcycle Club, turned off the engine of his Harley and took off his helmet. At 45, with tattoo-covered arms and a gray beard, Jake had exactly the kind of appearance that made respectable people cross the street. What they didn't know was that he had earned a law degree before dropping out to form the club. "Calm down, kid," said Jake, kneeling down to Tyler's height. "Tell me exactly what happened." Tyler wiped his nose on the sleeve of his worn shirt. "My mom works cleaning offices at night. Today she saw some cops doing something bad with drugs and money. When she got home, they showed up and said she was a drug dealer. But she's not. She's never done anything wrong." Tommy Tank Rodriguez, Jake's right-hand man, approached as he listened to the conversation. A former military man with 2 medals of honor, Tank knew corruption when he heard it. "Where did they take her?" Jake asked, his voice remaining calm despite the anger that was beginning to boil inside him. "To the Pine Street police station. The fat cop with the mustache said she'd disappear if anyone believed her word against theirs," Tyler sobbed. Jake and Tank exchanged a meaningful glance. They knew Detective Robert Bobby Carson from the Pine Street police station well. An arrogant 50-something who treated people like Tyler and his mother like disposable trash, Carson had built a reputation as a tough-on-crime cop, but Jake knew that behind that facade lurked one of the most corrupt cops in the city. "Listen here, kid," Jake said, putting his hand on Tyler's shoulder. "What's your mother's name?" "Diana. Diana Johnson." Jake nodded slowly. Diana Johnson. He remembered her. A hard-working woman, always polite when they passed each other on the street, she had never shown any fear or prejudice against the club. And now she was paying the price for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. "Tank, call the rest of the crew," Jake muttered. "Mickey, Razor, and Diesel. Now." What Detective Carson had no idea was that he was about to discover that underestimating people based on their appearance can be the most costly mistake anyone makes in life. If you're enjoying this story of how a group of bikers decided to take on police corruption, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because what happened next will show you that sometimes justice comes from where we least expect it. While Jake and his bikers were heading to the Pine Street police station, Diana Johnson was learning firsthand how the system works when you don't have money for expensive lawyers or a surname that opens doors. "Listen here, little black girl," Detective Carson growled, leaning over the interrogation room table. His bulging belly pressed against his bulletproof vest as he tapped his fat fingers on the metal table. "You can make things easier for all of us. Sign here confessing that you were selling crack in the office building, and I guarantee you'll be out on parole in 2 years." Diana kept her arms crossed, her hands still trembling slightly. "I've told you 1,000 times. I was cleaning the offices when I saw you exchanging money for bags of drugs with those men in suits. I didn't do anything wrong." Carson let out a cruel laugh that echoed through the windowless room. "See? It's her word against mine, and Detective Patterson's here." He gestured to his partner, a skinny man with a thin mustache who nodded vigorously. "And guess who the judge is going to believe?" What Carson didn't know was that 3 blocks away, Jake Morrison was parking his Harley in front of the law office where he had worked 15 years ago. The sign was still there, Martinez and Associates Criminal Law. "Jake." The surprised voice of Maria Martinez, his former partner, came from the second floor. "My God, how long has it been?" 5 years, Jake replied, climbing the stairs with Tank right behind him. "Maria, I need a favor. And I need it fast." Maria, a 50-year-old Latina lawyer who had built a solid reputation defending difficult cases, noted Jake's current appearance, the leather, the tattoos, the gray beard, but his eyes remained the same as when they had been the most feared criminal lawyers in town. "What happened to you after you left?" she asked, pouring coffee. "I discovered that justice in court is different from justice in real life," Jake replied dryly. "But today we need both kinds." Meanwhile, back at the police station, Carson was gaining confidence. In his limited mind, Diana was just another problem that would be easily dismissed by the system. He had no idea that Tyler had sought help, much less that this help had teeth. "Look," Carson said, flashing his yellowed teeth in a malicious smile. I know you have a little boy. It would be a shame if he ended up in the adoption system while his mommy serves 10 years for trafficking, wouldn't it? Diana felt tears burn her eyes, but she kept her composure. My son knows where I am. And he knows the truth. Oh sure, Carson laughed. Who's going to believe an 8-year-old black kid? Especially when he's questioned about the special cigarettes his mommy hid at home. Diana's blood ran cold. She knew Carson was lying, but she also knew how evidence could magically appear when it suited certain police officers. Patterson, who had remained silent until then, approached with an almost amused expression. Detective Carson, perhaps we should explain to her how things work around here. You see, Diana. I can call you Diana, right? This district has a 94% conviction rate for drug-related crimes. Especially when the defendants are, well, like you. Carson nodded, satisfied. And do you know why that rate is so high? Because I'm very, very good at my job. What none of them knew was that Jake had just left the city's digital archive, where Maria still had privileged access due to her ongoing cases. In his hands, he carried a stack of documents that would make Carson wish he had never gotten out of bed that morning. Tank, Jake said, looking at the papers. Remember when I told you that sometimes the law is on our side? Well, I just found 15 years on our side. Tank looked over Jake's shoulder and his smile was fierce. That son of a bitch has no idea what's coming, does he? Back in the interrogation room, Carson was feeling invincible. Last warning, Diana. Sign the confession or I guarantee you'll never see your son again outside of a 15-minute visit on Sundays. Diana lifted her chin, meeting Carson's eyes directly. I won't sign anything because I haven't done anything wrong. And if you think you can intimidate me by threatening my son, then you don't know the women in my family. Carson was about to respond when the door to the room burst open. Detective Carson, said the sergeant on duty, looking nervous. There's a lawyer downstairs who wants to talk to you. He says it's about Mrs. Johnson and that he has some documents you'll want to see. Carson frowned. That wasn't part of the plan. What lawyer? A guy named Jake Morrison. He's with some friends. The name Jake Morrison made Carson hesitate for a moment. It was familiar, but he couldn't remember where he'd heard it before. What he didn't notice was Diana's expression changing subtly, not to one of hope, but to something much more dangerous. Recognition. Because Diana Johnson knew that name too. And if Jake Morrison was there, it meant that Tyler had managed to do something no respectable adult had done in years. Find someone willing to stand up to Carson on equal terms. What the arrogant detective couldn't imagine was that he was about to discover that underestimating people based on appearances can be a fatal mistake, especially when those people know exactly where the bodies are buried. As Carson continued his intimidation performance in the interrogation room, Jake Morrison descended the stairs of the police station with the quiet confidence of someone who knows every loophole in the system. 15 years as a criminal defense attorney had not been forgotten, just redirected to a different purpose. Detective Carson, Jake said, entering the lobby with Tank and 3 other bikers behind him. The sergeant on duty gulped when he saw the group, but Jake maintained a polite smile. Jake Morrison, attorney. I'm here to represent Ms. Diana Johnson. Carson descended the stairs with his characteristic arrogance, adjusting the belt that barely held his belly in place. Lawyer, he laughed, looking Jake up and down. What kind of lawyer hangs out with a gang of bikers? The kind who doesn't charge for cases of blatant injustice, Jake replied calmly, handing him a briefcase. I believe you'll want to take a look at these documents before proceeding with the interrogation. Carson took the briefcase dismissively, not even bothering to open it. Listen here, biker dressed up as a lawyer. I don't care what paper you bought on the internet. Diana Johnson was caught red-handed with drugs and... Detective, Jake interrupted, his voice maintaining the professional tone he used in court. I strongly recommend that you open this folder. The first document is a copy of the court order requesting all security recordings from the Oak Street commercial building for the past 6 months. Carson frowned, finally opening the folder. His eyes quickly scanned the official letterhead. That doesn't prove anything. Recordings can be edited, misinterpreted. The second document, Jake continued, is a copy of the Internal Affairs Report on your financial activities for the past 2 years. Interesting how your bank account shows regular deposits of $15,000 that don't match your official salary. Carson's face began to redden. You're fishing in dangerous waters, biker. Tank stepped forward, crossing his muscular arms. A decorated former military man, he had seen many men like Carson trying to intimidate innocent people. Boss, he muttered to Jake, do you want me to explain to him how fishing in really dangerous waters works? Jake raised his hand discreetly, signaling Tank to stay calm. The third document is where things get interesting, detective. An affidavit from Marcus Williams, accountant for the construction company Riverside Development, detailing how you and your partner Patterson received consulting fees to facilitate building permits in specific areas of the city. Carson swallowed hard, his hands beginning to shake as he leafed through the papers. That's just allegations. No hard evidence. Ah, but I have hard evidence, Jake said, pulling a tablet out of his leather jacket. Maria Martinez, my former partner, has privileged access to the city's digital archives. You know what we found when we cross-referenced the dates of your bank deposits with the approvals of building permits. On the tablet screen, Jake showed a detailed spreadsheet. Each row showed a date, an amount deposited into Carson's account, and a permit approved in the same period. The pattern was so obvious that even a jury of ordinary people would understand it in seconds. Fascinating coincidence, don't you think? Jake smiled sarcastically. $15,000 deposited on Monday, $2 million permit approved on Tuesday. That's happened 23 times in the last 2 years. Patterson, who had come downstairs to see what was going on, turned pale when he saw the documents. Carson, maybe we should. Shut up, Patterson. Carson growled, but his voice no longer had the same authority. Sweat was beginning to form on his forehead. These documents could be forged. Jake laughed genuinely for the first time since he had arrived. Fake FBI files? Because the fourth document is a preliminary report from the federal investigation into police corruption in urban districts. Guess which police station has been under investigation for 6 months? The tablet now showed an official document with the FBI seal. Carson immediately recognized some names on the list, including his own, highlighted in yellow as a person of priority interest. Impossible, Carson muttered. No one knew about the investigation. No one knew officially, Jake corrected. But when you have contacts in the federal justice system, certain information reaches the right ears. Especially when those people care about real justice. Tank smiled fiercely. Boss, can I speak now? Jake nodded. Tank approached Carson, his imposing height causing the detective to involuntarily step back. You know what the difference is between us and you guys, Carson? We may look scary on the outside, but inside we fight for the wronged. You look respectable on the outside, but inside you're rotten to the bone. Mickey Razor Thompson, the third biker, had remained silent until then. A former private investigator, he approached carrying his own briefcase. Jake, show him the best part. Jake took Mickey's briefcase and removed a series of photographs. These are photos of you and Patterson receiving money from Thomas Riverside last Thursday. Mickey has a knack for photographic documentation. The photos were crystal clear, Carson and Patterson in a dark parking lot, receiving an envelope from a man in a suit. The sequence showed the money being counted, the handshakes, even Carson putting the envelope in the glove compartment of his personal car. This particular meeting, Jake continued, took place exactly 24 hours before Diana Johnson witnessed a similar transaction. What an extraordinary coincidence, don't you think? Carson was now visibly shaking, realizing he had fallen into a carefully planned trap. You were following me? Not you specifically, Mickey replied with a predatory smile. We were investigating Riverside Development on suspicion of money laundering. You just happened to show up in the photos as an unexpected bonus. Tank laughed. Boss, wanna tell him about the recorder? Jake shook his head with feigned concern. Ah, Carson, I'm sorry to inform you that Diana Johnson is smarter than you imagined. When she witnessed your meeting on Thursday, she had the presence of mind to record the entire conversation on her cell phone. Carson felt the blood drain from his face. That's inadmissible in court. Actually, it's not, Jake corrected with obvious satisfaction. Diana was on public property, the conversation was audible from a reasonable distance, and she had legitimate reasons to fear for her safety. The recording is perfectly admissible. Patterson finally found the courage to speak. "Carson, we need to call our lawyer. Now." "Good idea," Jake agreed, putting the documents back in the folder. "You're going to need a very good one. Because in approximately," he glanced at his watch, 15 minutes, a copy of all these documents will be delivered simultaneously to the district attorney, the police chief, the FBI, and the local press. Carson tried one last intimidation tactic. "You don't know who you're messing with. I have connections in this town, protection." Tank laughed loudly. "Protection? Your only protector is going to be too busy protecting himself when the FBI starts investigating your connections." Jake closed the folder with a satisfying click. "Now, Detective Carson, I think it would be prudent to release Diana Johnson immediately and drop all charges against her. Unless, of course, you'd rather explain to a grand jury why you arrested the only witness who can corroborate your criminal activities." What Carson failed to understand was that he had completely underestimated not only Jake Morrison, but the entire network of people who cared enough to take action when official justice failed. His arrogance had blinded him to the fact that true defenders of justice can come in the most unexpected guises. And as he stood there, pale and trembling, realizing that his corrupt career was about to collapse, Jake Morrison smiled with the quiet satisfaction of someone who knew that sometimes the best revenge isn't personal, it's systematic. Carson attempted one last desperate maneuver, reaching for the phone on the reception desk. "I'm going to call the police chief. He'll put an end to this charade." "Ah, you mean Chief Thompson?" Jake smiled with the expression of someone who had saved the best for last. "Interesting that you mention that. Tank, show him document number 5. Tank opened an additional folder and pulled out an official transcript. "This is the recording of the call Thompson made to the FBI on Monday, offering full cooperation in exchange for immunity. It seems his protector decided to save his own skin first." Carson's face turned into a mask of disbelief. "Impossible. Thompson would never." "Thompson had access to the same evidence you're seeing now," Jake explained calmly. "When they showed him the bank documents showing the $200,000 he received over the last 3 years, he became very cooperative." Patterson began to back toward the door, but found Mickey Razor discreetly blocking the exit. Not in a threatening way, just positioned so that it was clear no one was leaving until the conversation was over. "But the best part," Jake continued, pulling out his cell phone, "is that Diana Johnson didn't just record your conversation on Thursday. She also photographed the license plate numbers, the faces of everyone involved, and, my favorite part, she streamed it all live to a private Facebook group." Carson swallowed hard. "Streamed live. 47 people watched you receive money from Thomas Riverside in real time." Jake showed him the cell phone screen. "The video has already been shared over 1,000 times. The comments are enlightening." Tank read a few comments aloud. "That's the cop who arrested my cousin for possession of medical marijuana. My family lost their home because of Riverside's projects. Now I understand why certain permits were always approved." Carson tried to grab the phone, but Jake gently pushed him away. "Oh, I wouldn't recommend that. The video is already on the FBI's servers. Trying to destroy evidence would just be another crime to add to your already impressive list." That's when Patterson broke down. "Carson, they know everything. The warehouses, the meetings, even the money we hid in the police station safe." "Shut up, you idiot." Carson yelled, but it was too late. Jake nodded with satisfaction. "Thanks for confirming that, Detective Patterson. Mickey, you're recording this, right?" Mickey discreetly raised a digital recorder. "Every word, boss." The station door opened and 3 men in suits walked in. FBI badges gleamed on their jacket lapels. Detectives Carson and Patterson? Federal agents Martinez, Cohen, and Williams. "You are under arrest for corruption, extortion, and conspiracy against civil rights." Carson looked around desperately, like a cornered animal. "This is a trap. They planned all this." "Actually," said Agent Martinez, "Mr. Morrison here has simply provided us with evidence of crimes you committed willingly. There is no trap in documenting the truth." Patterson began to cry openly. "I have a family. Children. Please, I'll cooperate. I'll tell you everything." Carson tried one last intimidation tactic. "You have no idea how many powerful people will want our protection. Riverside Development has connections all the way to Washington. Jake laughed genuinely. Carson, don't you get it yet? Riverside has been under investigation by the FBI for a year. You weren't the main targets, you were just small fish caught in a bigger net. Agent Cohen nodded in agreement. Operation Clean Foundation has already indicted 17 people, including 3 mayors, 2 judges, and 12 businessmen. You were literally the last ones on the list. While Carson and Patterson were being handcuffed, Jake headed for the stairs to fetch Diana Johnson. She descended slowly, free of handcuffs, her dignity intact despite hours of questioning. Ms. Johnson, Jake said respectfully, I am deeply sorry for what you've been through. Your son Tyler showed extraordinary courage in asking for our help. Diana nodded, tears of relief streaming down her face. Thank you. I didn't know if anyone would believe me. Sometimes, Jake said, watching Carson being led away, justice has to come from unexpected places. The system failed you, but that doesn't mean justice doesn't exist. Tank approached carrying a box with all of Diana's personal documents that had been illegally confiscated. Your belongings, ma'am. And this, he handed her an official card, is the number for the civil lawyer who specializes in police misconduct cases. Jake has already spoken with him. Outside the police station, Tyler ran into his mother's arms. The small crowd that had gathered, neighbors, local journalists, onlookers, spontaneously applauded when they saw her walk out free. Carson, being pushed into the federal vehicle, shouted one last time, "This isn't over. You don't know who you're messing with." Jake approached the window of the vehicle and spoke low enough that only Carson could hear. Actually, Carson, I know exactly who I'm messing with. A small man who wore a uniform to intimidate innocent people. And now you're going to find out how it feels when the system actually works. As the cars drove away with Carson and Patterson, Jake watched Diana hug Tyler in the crowd of supporters. What the corrupt ex-detective would never understand was that true strength didn't come from badges or uniforms, but from the courage of ordinary people willing to stand up when official justice fails. Tank tapped Jake on the shoulder. Boss, Channel 7 News wants an interview. The reporter is asking how a motorcycle club managed to take down a corruption operation that had been going on for years. Jake smiled, watching Tyler laugh as Diana lifted him up in her arms. Tell him that sometimes real justice happens when people who care decide to take action, regardless of which side of the law they are theoretically representing. The final irony was delicious. Carson had spent years judging people by their appearance, assuming that bikers were criminals and that working families like Diana's were easy targets. Now he discovered that the criminals knew the law better than he did, and the easy target had been smart enough to document every move of his corruption. As the sirens faded into the distance and the crowd gradually dispersed, one question hung in the air: how could such an elaborate corruption operation be brought down by a desperate little boy asking the right criminals for help? And more importantly, what would happen when the whole town found out that real protection had come from those they least expected? 6 months later, the city had changed completely. Carson got 15 years in federal prison, Patterson became a cooperating witness in exchange for a reduced sentence, and the Riverside Development investigation dismantled a corruption network that spanned 3 states. Diana Johnson was not only completely exonerated, she became a local symbol of courage. The civil lawsuit against the police department yielded $2.3 million in damages, allowing her to start her own cleaning company, hiring other working mothers from the community. Tyler, now 9, often visited the Road Devil's workshop, where Jake taught him about civil rights and how the legal system really works. The boy had become a minor local celebrity, the brave kid who ran to the right bad guys. Jake Morrison never officially returned to law, but he continued to help cases of injustice through the club. Operation Road Devils became an urban legend, bikers who showed up when the system failed the most vulnerable. The most ironic part? Carson, now in prison, discovered that some of the inmates were people he had unjustly arrested over the years. His protection in jail was exactly 0. Tank summed it up perfectly during an interview on the local news. People judge by appearances. They think a uniform means hero and leather means villain. The truth is, character has no uniform. The most powerful lesson came from Diana herself. My son taught me that courage isn't about not being afraid, it's about asking for help when you need it, even if it comes from where you least expect it. Today, a small memorial in the town square honors Tyler Johnson, the boy who taught a town about true courage. Jake and the Road Devils attend the annual ceremony religiously, proving that real heroes rarely wear capes. Carson tried to destroy an innocent family, but ended up destroying only himself. Diana learned that true justice sometimes comes from the people society least expects. If this story touched your heart and showed you that we should never judge a book by its cover, subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove that real justice exists when courageous people decide to take action.